my name is Vivian Lay, and I grew up here in Oklahoma City, and I graduated from UCO with a education in theater and communications in 2012, and then I got a job swiftly thereafter at Belle Isle Enterprise Middle School, which is an Oklahoma City public school. So I've been there now for, this is my 9th year, so I'll be going into my 10th after this year.
Awesome. What kind of inspired you to go into the education field, and when did you decide that you wanted to go into that field?
Oddly enough, I've always, for whatever reason, have wanted to become a teacher from what I remember since like 5th grade. And then for a long time, like in high school, I always thought it would be English because I love to read and write. But I joined a speech and debate and acting class in high school. And then I really fell in love with the possibility of teaching that because it's really unique, but it's also, I really am passionate about that subject. And so from then, I just went in and I decided to become a teacher because of my amazing high school teacher as well. And so there was a lot of influence there.
Great. And you kind of already mentioned this, but if you want to give more details, what did you study in college and where did you go?
So I went to the University of Central Oklahoma up in Edmond, and I was there for 2 years. So I started off at OCCC first, um, got my, what is it called? I cannot remember right now. Got my associate's degree. And then I transferred because everything transferred over. And so I was at UCO from 2009 to 2012. So I graduated with a theater of education degree / mass communication. So that's specifically to teach secondary education.
Great. And next question, what are some obstacles that you have faced or continue to face in your career or your job? And this can be like about COVID or even before that.
So I would say even with COVID, one of there's a lot of obstacles, but one of the biggest one I would say is parents. There are parents who they expect a lot from educators. There's a lack of support oftentimes, or there is a philosophy that their children cannot fail, and I think like it's a generation thing, whereas like back then in my generation, if I came home with like a D or an F, my mom would immediately have been like, why did you get a bad grade? Now parents are very much like, why did you give my child a bad grade? It's not like, well, your kid earned it, and they don't see that, and other obstacles is obviously just a lack of overall support. I think a lot of people like to say that they support education, but when it comes down to voting for things to help with education, people don't vote for it. They actually oftentimes vote against it because it raises your taxes, and so they say that they like to help us and stuff, but at the end of it, they don't. And so the lack of support from parents, government, and just overall, I feel like citizens, and also a lack of like respect for educators. So those are, to me, is like the biggest obstacles for an educator.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you do to like kind of cope, I guess, with those obstacles, especially when it comes to parents and things, because you can't like yell at them or anything?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just one of those things where, I mean, your colleagues are your family, right? And so it's a lot of like after school get-togethers or something, or like venting or having meetings to kind of figure out ways to better like explain to parents or like better connect with them. Because some of our parents we have great relationships with, but even then they're really defensive. When you reach out to them, it's like, your child has not, especially with COVID right now, when you say your kid has not been on a Google Meet, they haven't turned in like now 10 lessons, assignments, and there have been parents that said, well, I'm not home to make them do it, so they're just not going to. And you're like, oh wow, okay. But like this year's been really rough, so like we understand that there's a lot of depression, especially in middle school age. They're going through a lot, like physically, their brains are developing drastically in middle school. And so there's just a lot of stuff happening. And so we're giving a lot more grace this year than on a normal year.
Yeah, and this is also kind of a similar question. How much did your job change during the pandemic, and how differently does it operate?
Oh, it changed drastically. So I'm with OKCPS, and so we have been basically completely virtual up until just a couple weeks ago. Then so we would just meet with our students kind of like every other day type of a thing with classes. So we would see them twice a week. And then we'll have one day where we have like office hours to where kids who are falling behind, they can meet with you. It also gave teachers the opportunity to like meet with each other and see what's going on. And so it has been very strange. We started going back in person, but it's called a hybrid version. And so with our middle school, we teach on a block schedule. And so now we see them less than we did when they were online. And so with online, we saw them twice a week. In the hybrid version, we only see them once a week. And so teaching has been really difficult because most teachers are what they teach at like 100% is now probably around 30%. I know that for me, that like by now I would have taught two different plays. I would have, different things. And I had to just like take that out because you can't, there's no time. And the window of like, you see them once a week. And so there's a lot of review that has to happen when you see them again.
Thank you. And this is kind of a completely different question, but did you have any role models either now or when you were younger or in college that also inspired you to teach?
Yeah, so one of my biggest role models is Mr. Brett Young. I went to Westmore High School in Moore, and he was the speech and debate teacher there, and we are still great friends. And he currently now teaches at Bishop McGinnis. He was a major influence for me. He was really kind. I was the type of kid that didn't really like fit in anywhere. I'm also like a first generation born here in America. My parents came over during the war, and so I had a really hard time connecting with like a lot of the American kids because like I spoke Vietnamese like fluently. Like my first language was Vietnamese for a while. And so like I had a really weird and hard time connecting with like the Vietnamese kids in Oklahoma. But also just with like Americans. And so like I had no friends like legitimately up until probably high school until I started joining speech and debate. And so it really like shaped and molded me into like who I am today. And I still have those friendships. And so that's why him and his class was so important to me.
Great. And you also kind of said this in your introduction, but what was your first job after college in education? And do you want to like give more details?
Yeah, so my first job is actually at Belle Isle. So I just stayed there the whole time. I was a part of this program at UCO called the Urban Teacher Prep Academy. So when you get in there, you get to teach full time for a full year at a school. Whereas normally when you go into education during your student teacher year, you only are teaching for one semester. But yeah, Belle Isle is an application school. It's an enterprise. And so it kind of runs a little bit like a charter, but not quite because we're still under the Oklahoma City Public School District. And so we still follow OKCPS rules and all that. The only major difference is that it's in the application school. And so it's not just like a neighbor school.
Awesome. Well, this next question is kind of what's a day in a life like as a speech and debate slash drama teacher? Obviously, it's different with COVID, but if you want to talk about a day in a life now or before COVID.
Oh yeah. Oh, so I generally get to school about an hour early because I need to be alone in my classroom for like mentally prepare myself because middle school is really high in energy, which is why I actually really love middle school. Um, get in there and then you take down the chairs. Right now, like you're wiping everything down. You're trying to socially distance as much as possible with the chairs. Um, and then when the kids come in right now, it is temp check. So once they get seated, you run around the room and you take their temperature. If there's a kid that has like a temp degree, then you call the office. And then someone will come down and grab them. Every school currently should have a full-time nurse, or we've been trying to. We got a new nurse, and right now we're in split buildings. So fifth and sixth grade is at one building, 7 minutes away, and then the other seventh and eighth grade building is somewhere else. Um, and so since I'm a fine arts teacher, I also have to travel between the buildings. Um, so it's temp check, and then it is lunch counts. So this year, that's the different thing, is like we're lunch counting now. Whereas like back then they just kind of like would make a certain amount of food. Now it's almost more specified. They also get what is called supper. So I call it after school snacks. So kids could also sign up for um, after school snacks, and they can grab a bag on their way out. And it's pretty good. It's like a sandwich, or it can be like a burrito. Um, and stuff like that, just because of urban kids, like you don't know what parents are currently struggling for food. And so we're trying to offer them multiple like food options, obviously all of which are free. And then classes just regular, we have 80-minute classes. Then when everyone is wearing a mask, including the teachers, and so yeah, we still are having team meetings. Like teachers are still meeting. Some I think are maybe meeting still on Google Meet, but my fine arts team is meeting in person in my room. We're just all spaced out. But that's a regular day. You just go through kind of the same thing, but like we're trying to do more stuff with the computer, and not, sadly, not as much like group work, which to me is really important, is for kids to learn how to get cooperate with each other. But this year is a lot harder to do with the fact that you have to distance.
Yeah. And what are some cool things you got to do or cool places you got to go as a speech and debate slash drama teacher?
I I really have wanted to do like a group travel with them to a different state, like to New York. I have not been able to put that together quite yet. There's a lot of legality stuff that and liability issues. Um, the only trip that I have taken is with the band and orchestra down to Texas one year, and that is actually to help them chaperone. And so like for us, we haven't really been able to do a lot of travel. Um, but with my class, I teach a mock trial unit. And so one of the cool things has been to be able to have like lawyers come in and be the judges during mock trial. You did my mock trials, right? Yeah. And so it's just fun. The subject itself is a lot of fun. And with speech and debate, I do take a small group that performs at Bishop McGuinness. They do a novice tournament against other middle schools. We used to do Putnam City North, and then at Bishop McGuinness. Those were our two competitions. This year, I'm unsure. I haven't heard anything from either school, so I'm guessing that it's not going to happen this year, but usually we do.
Awesome. Yeah, I love those mock trials.
Yeah,
Um,
they're so fun.
yeah. Throughout I believe you said 9 years at Belle Isle, what were some of your highest and lowest points?
Oh, my highest are always when I get to put on a show, which has been every year, but this year, which has been really hard for me because I'm really I need like creative outlets. And this year has been rough mentally because of that. Like you're not connecting with your kids the same way. And I'm not getting to do what I really love, which is like to direct and put on a show and teach kids all of that aspect of it. Um, and so that's what I really miss. Um, what was your question? Now I just like I feel like I'm rambling. So what was your question again?
It was highest points and
Oh,
lowest
highest. Okay.
points.
So that my highest point is always being able to do shows. Um, lowest point has been a crazy thing that happened, which was last year. Um a parent actually passed away in the parking lot after one of our rehearsals. And so seeing the our students' reaction to finding her mom in the car. Um, that's the type of stuff that like you don't ever think would happen, and then the whole school kind of goes through it too. The whole cast and crew do, and then we had to pull a like almost like a counseling day for all the kids involved in the cast and crew, and so like school isn't just educating, we're also making sure that emotionally they are taken care of as well when they go through hardships such as like the death of a family member or anything like that. And so that was definitely the lowest and most traumatic thing that has ever happened. And those are things that they do not ready you for as an educator, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely like a really horrible event that can
Yeah.
happen. My final question is, what would you say to a teenager or any young person who's interested in teaching, whether it's teaching drama, speech and debate, or just teaching in general?
I would say you have to have the heart and the passion and the compassion for it, because teacher burnout is very real. There's a shelf life of educators where most will make it to year 3 and then leave. I have started to reach that to where my plan right now is to do my 10th year next year and then possibly leave. And it's because like the pay is a struggle. Like I own my own home, and I've had a second job for the past 4 years on the weekend. And so I don't have a weekend or any time off since like from August, and then in the summer, I always have a second job. So like people are like, oh, you guys have summers off. Most teachers are working multiple jobs in the summer, or they're doing like seasonal stuff because the money isn't enough. And so be aware that like money is a thing, but if that is not a hindrance to you, or that is not something that like you necessarily have to worry about, then like teaching is honestly one of the most rewarding and fun jobs there is. It's also really powerful, and when you think about it, because you're putting a lot of different perspectives into kids' minds that they never would have had. Like they grow up hearing their parents' perspectives the whole time, and then when they go to school, that's when they start, like experience things for themselves and growing their own opinions. And a lot of it is shaped by the different teachers that are around, and their experiences. And so it's a really cool, powerful job, and it is so fulfilling, and it's a blast, and it's different every day, but you definitely have to have the stamina and the heart for it.
Yeah, for sure. And one question that just came up to me is, what are your favorite lessons to teach, speech and debate or drama related?
My favorite thing is teaching Lincoln Douglas debate, and I teach it in a kind of a watered down version of what a high school would do. But to me, it's because you have to debate both sides of a prompt, right? And so when you do that, they hate it because they're like, oh, but I agree with this side, you know. But in the real world, like how you can win arguments is if you can see both sides, and then you're able to counter what the opposite person's about to say before they say it, because you've already thought about what the opposite person is going to say because you've done your research. I think speech and debate actually opens more people to have like a more empathetic mindset, because if you can understand and see both perspectives all the time, and it trains you to actually do that, if you do it long enough, right? Um, then you kind of start seeing that like no one's really wrong, like it's just their opinions and their experiences that have shaped them to think how they think, and that their values and stuff like that are just different. So different is not necessarily wrong. And so that's why I really love speech and debate, is teaching Lincoln Douglas.
And is there anything else you would like to add? I hope I'm not like forgetting anything.
No, I think I've said everything I needed.
Actually,
Okay,
would you
well, thank
mind?
you so much.
So sorry. Actually, would you mind?
It's
I
okay.
had
It's okay.
a real quick question,
Yeah.
sort of to round it out. Is a question that we ask usually at the end of most interviews, but and I know this is sort of super ethereal and not quite a real solid question, but how do you think that your job and what you've worked on in the past 10 years has benefited society? I think you glossed over this a little bit in some of your answers, but it'd be great if you could just go a little bit more in depth about it.
Yeah, I think what I have contributed would be to hopefully facilitate stronger, more kind, and productive citizens of, the United States. Like, my hope is that like they are able to be more open-minded is the biggest one, and to be able to bravely state their opinions, but be able to back it up. And so a lot of these kids are the one that have like really loved my class are like lawyers. A lot of them have entered into like politics, or they're wanting to be lawyers, and so they're making big changes hopefully in the world.
That's great. Dennis, did you have any more questions?
No, that's pretty much it.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.